Welcome to a busted play, an illegal use of hands to the face short.
Today, we got the top 5 fantasy football wide receivers of 2021 as our projections will be coming up very shortly. Jake, what do you think? Who do you think will be the best fantasy football wide receiver in 2021?
Well, let me start off with some honorable mentions. Here's some guys that did not make my top 5. Mainly just some questions in the air for these guys, why they didn't make it. Michael Thomas, he'd probably be number one if I knew for a fact Jameis was the starting quarterback, just because the volume of passes that would be thrown his way would be insane if Jameis was QB. Devontae Adams, if Jordan Love is the quarterback, I do not see him having anywhere near as great of production as he does with Aaron Rodgers, even though he does get schemed open a majority of the time. And then Justin Jefferson, I think he's just bound to have a sophomore slump, and defense will start keying in on him more because I think they just viewed him as, oh, he's the guy opposite Thielen, and then Thielen was the one that they focus on more, even though Thielen still had a great season. But I think a slump is in order for him. Now, starting my top 5. Number 5, Keenan Allen. The volume of catches that Keenan Allen has on a game-to-game basis is insane, especially for them having a good number 2 wide receiver in Mike Williams. He just catches so many balls, and if you're in a PPR league, get Keenan Allen. He's probably be number 1 in PPR because he gets like 10. He's in the double digits consistently for catches a game. It's
Similar
insane.
to Thomas.
Yes. Number 2, I have Allen Robinson.
4.
For the Bears. Oh, 4. Jeez, I have it ordered going down, but number 4, I have Allen Robinson. Once Justin Jefferson gets in, he's going to make the most out of the weapons that he has. And I think he's going to really have Allen Robinson shine for the first time. He always shines, but really like put him on a pedestal there, which he hasn't been able to do because he's been in Chicago, and that's where quarterbacks just do not do well. I don't know why, but quarterbacks just do not do well in Chicago. Hopefully Justin Fields changes that and makes Allen Robinson one of the best fantasy wide receivers. At 3, I've got DeAndre Hopkins. Another guy, just Kyler Murray. You could see it watching Cardinals games. If he had nowhere to go, he was 1,000% confident to just chuck up a bomb to DeAndre Hopkins there. And DeAndre Hopkins has great hands, and he came down with the majority of those. He just threw up prayers to him for. If that keeps going, I mean, the yards that he racks up is insane. He was top of the league in that last year. Number 2, another guy that was number 1 in yards last year, Stephon Diggs. Number 1 in receptions as well. I think the Bills will be spreading the ball out more. Granted, I think Diggs can have a season even better than the one that he had last season. I still think he'd be 2 for fantasy here. And nothing wrong with him or what the Bills are doing or Josh Allen. I just think a guy coming back, not a wide receiver, but a guy coming back is really going to help his number 1 wide receiver get to the top spot here. And that'd be Amari Cooper on the Cowboys. Dak Prescott was on pace to throw for like 7,000 yards by the end of the season with how hot he came out of the gate. And if he is even close to that next season, Amari Cooper is going to be a steal in fantasy drafts because I think he's going to fall pretty far just because of like, oh, well, Dak's injury and all that. Maybe not super far, but he's going to fall a decent ways. And just Dak's slinging it like he was to start the season off, and especially with the Cowboys and that defense. They're going to be playing from behind or just trying to go score for score with teams. Amari Cooper is going to be deadly for points in fantasy.
That's really interesting. There is something about trying to figure out a healthy balance between what teams are going to be able to take, like, say, a Dallas Cowboys team with Gallup, Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb, who are all really good wide receivers, how are they going to either balance it so that they all get an even amount of targets or receptions, or are they really going to choose to still force feed one guy more than the other two, or how is that going to play out? And I've got to say, it's different for every team. Some teams there's two guys, and I actually feel like okay about picking one of the guys over the other to still have a really good year. But for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason with Dallas, I was thinking about Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was the name that came to mind for Dallas, but I left him off my list just because when I was thinking about it, I'm like, I don't feel like he's gonna be able to just capture like all those number one targets that some other guys may. And that's still to say I have other guys on here that definitely have solid number two wide receivers on their team, but I actually don't have anybody in my top five that I would say really has a dangerous number three receiver, because I feel like once you get into that territory, I feel like there's too much spreading of the wealth to go around for it to really be insane. If Dak throws for 6,000 yards, though, I mean, it may be
Yeah.
it may be a really bad take on my part, because it feels like if you throw for 6,000 yards, one guy has to get to at least 1,800.
Mm-hmm.
um,
That's what I was thinking, putting him in that one spot. Is just the sheer volume of yards Dak is going to have in the air. I think is going to supplement them having three great wide receivers.
well, it's going to be interesting. I have to say I'm not projecting Dak to go for 5,000 yards this season. I think he'll have a really good year again, but not 5,000. And I just think that him having to share will hold him off. And another guy that you said that I didn't even put in my honorable mentions, honestly, I just want to say his name since I didn't put him in my honorable mentions. I feel like I guess I am doing him wrong by not mentioning him, is Michael Thomas. And that's purely because of the fact that I do want the Saints to go with a run heavy offense look this year. And I feel like he will still be their short underneath guy for easy pass game stuff. But I don't know if he wouldn't be even getting used underneath still like he already is. I don't think he would
Mm-hmm.
get used underneath as much as he is currently, and I think that alongside with the lesser potential of him going down the field means that he would have less fantasy points. So then there's four guys I have as my actual honorable mentions. Um, the first guy is just because there's no other options on this team, and it's kind of like you're gonna have to force feed him. So Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner, uh, for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with him purely because there's no one else. There's really no one else to throw to. I feel like if I'm Jalen Hurts, I know that's my number one guy every play. That's the first guy I'm looking at if I have the option to, or the first guy I really want to get to the ball to if I'm allowed to. And that's what I would do. So, because I don't see another guy on that team that should be stealing targets from him, really, as a number one receiver. Devontae Adams is the second guy that I have as an honorable mention. I mean, they love targeting him like crazy, so he should always get his yardage and stuff, but he's off the list because we don't know about Aaron Rodgers. That's all I need to say.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Galladay. I feel like even though the Giants have a really solid receiving core, like I kind of just said with the Cowboys, I feel like it's still pretty obvious, though. Unlike the Cowboys, I feel like you could kind of make an argument that Gallup, Lamb, or Cooper could be a number one receiver. I feel like even though the Giants have a really solid receiving core, it's obvious that Galladay is the best receiver on that team at this time. So that means you have to play a balanced defensive look, not shadow anybody too much. But that's still the first guy that Daniel Jones should be looking at, and he could be looking at a huge year. And the last guy I have as an honorable mention, he was kind of interchangeable with his teammate. I chose Robert Woods here. Could also be Cooper Kupp. I don't know which one Stafford's gonna like more, but we know that those guys are gonna get their yards, and I feel like one of them may be in for an even bigger season than usual. Here's my actual top five. At number five, I have my guy coming out of last year's draft that I was not a big fan of, but he absolutely somehow flipped a switch and literally played the exact opposite type of game he did in college, where I swear he couldn't separate at all, to now being like one of the best separation creators in the NFL, at least on deep routes and crossing routes, and that's Justin Jefferson. I think that he's going to be in for a really good year. I think that the Vikings still have a very good run game. I think that Adam Thielen is still very scary on the opposite side, and I feel like that gives him plenty of opportunities to go make plays. Number 4 for me is Tyreek Hill. Tyreek would be higher if it wasn't for the fact that the Chiefs literally have everybody running verticals. So it's literally just like, okay, Mahomes, pick whichever one you want, and if not, we can get it to Kelsey underneath. If the Chiefs really were like other teams where they actually cared about their number one receiver like a lot, which I don't think they do. I don't think they really are like that much like we need to get the ball to Tyreek Hill. I just think that he would be even higher, but he's an insane player still, and even though they don't force feed him the ball, he's the best receiver on the team by far, and that's excluding Travis Kelce because he's a tight end. Number 3 for me is another one that you had on your list, Keenan Allen. I have him at number 3. I think Herbert is going to be improved. I think he is obviously the number 1 receiver in LA. Even though Mike Williams is a solid number 2, the thing that Mike Williams kind of struggles with is creating separation. So really, when you go to Mike Williams, you're like, okay, go make a spectacular catch. And he usually does, which is the weird part. But Keenan Allen excels in the exact opposite way. He gets wide open and he makes throws really easy. And when somebody's wide open, it's a lot easier to trust and make that throw than it is when the opposite guy, who's the number 2 receiver, is like, hey, throw it up to me. I'll body him. It's just easier to get your targets that way. And he always sucks up a ton of targets. And I think Herbert will only be better and he'll have a great year. He's at number 3 for me. Number 2 for me is DeAndre Hopkins. I think this is pretty easy. I mean, probably like the best hands, body positioning, combination, route runner, just kind of a balance of everything in the NFL. Really, and I would say really excels in terms of like jump balls and just being able to get his hands and control the ball no matter what type of throw is coming his way. But concentration, right? But, just an all-around solid receiver. And I think he's going to suck up targets still in that air raid offense that Kingsbury will still be employing for sure. I highly doubt he's changing up the game plan a ton this year. And number 1, completely biased here, but we're going Stephon Diggs again. Why can't it be back-to-back? He's still obviously the number 1 receiver for the Buffalo Bills. We should, I'll credit this, we should have Cole Beasley in the slot still. Emmanuel Sanders working on the opposite side. But I think everybody knows that Buffalo's number 1 guy is Stephon Diggs. I think Allen still knows that that's really his favorite guy to go to. And Allen is also, unlike Mahomes, probably a little more likely to go more to his favorites than Mahomes. I don't know how much I should actually put into that, but that's just how I feel at this point. And I feel like Mahomes, even if Mahomes does have a favorite, I feel like his favorite is actually probably Kelsey over Hill, and then Hill's second. So Hill is almost like his Beasley for Allen, and it just kind of switches everything around. I just feel like Josh Allen's and Stephon Diggs' chemistry is so solid that there's no way that they fall off, and that he will definitely still get a ton of targets, and I have no doubt that he'll still be getting open, making catches and making contested catches and everything like that. So I think he'll be the number 1 fantasy wide receiver for 2021.
Yeah. I can see the direction you went. Obviously, me putting Amari Cooper at 1 kind of just bumped everyone down on your list like 1 spot, plus the inclusion of Allen Robinson because I believe in Justin Fields. I couldn't help but notice though, neither of us had AJ Brown on our list.
Yeah, because we still both know, even though it's the best receiver in the league, we both know that that's not what the Titans are probably going to do. They're not going to force feed him the ball. I'd honestly expect him and Julio to have about an even amount of targets, and they're still going to run the ball a ton because Derrick Henry is still their running back. And they should also still get their quarterback involved in the run game because their quarterback is really sneaky athletic. I mean, all sorts of things that are kind of going against A.J. Brown. So even though he's the best receiver in the league, he's not a top 5. He's probably not a top 5 candidate in terms of fantasy points for 2021.
Oh no, I agree. I agree.
All right. Y'all set?
Yeah, I think we can cut this here.